Hey everyone, you're listening to the DIY Small Business Podcast, and my name is Yarrow. Welcome back, and thank you so much for your patience with this next episode. I know it's been a little while, and I really missed podcasting. I had a lot going on in the last couple of weeks, and so I needed a little bit more of a break than I had expected, but I'm really excited to be back now, and I'm so welcoming your questions for future solo episodes as well. So, as you might know, if you've been listening to the podcast so far, I've been just kind of speaking by myself, answering questions, which was really, really fun. And I'm now beginning to do interviews for this podcast as well. So if you know my other podcast, Daydreaming Wolves, you know that I'm also really into having conversations. And I'm so excited that this first one that I'm sharing with you today is with my friend Elinor Predota, who's just so exciting and wonderful and has so much insight to share about what it means to build a business that is truly aligned with our values. So we talked about what it is like to work in cooperatives and the emotional labor involved in rethinking our relationship to power and leadership, which is really quite big. We talked about building a small business against and beyond capitalism, and we talked about ways of building sustainable and regenerative communities, as well as personal and collective freedom. So yeah, have a listen, let us know what you think. There's some really exciting links to explore in the show notes as well. Elinor is inviting people to have conversations about businesses beyond capitalism, and I'm going to have one of those for sure, and I would invite you to do the same. Some small updates from me. As promised, I'm going to be podcasting on both my shows more often in spring. I'm really excited for the equinox, which is now just 2 days away, and yeah, it feels like a fresh start, and really looking forward to see what is going to bloom. I have just redesigned daydreamwolves.com this weekend. In case you're interested in that side of my business as well, check that out. There's lots of new things to explore. There's also new colors that feel like a better match for me now. The DIY Small Business School is really growing beautifully, and I love that everyone is over in Mighty Networks now, exploring the course there and also connecting and sharing with each other. We're still running live workshops every other week, the next couple of weeks, and I'm continuing that into the summer because I love meeting everyone, and it feels really good to be offering this low-cost business training that also has a group component and these live segments. So if you want to become a part of that, you can pledge $11 or more on my Patreon, and that gets you access to the community, the DIY Small Business School, lots and lots of tech and social media and marketing and self-care trainings, and also the live workshops. And you're supporting the podcast as well. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm wishing you a beautiful week. Hi everyone, I'm so excited to treat you today to my first interview for this new business podcast, actually with someone who has also been on Daydreaming Wolves. And if you want to know more about my guest today, then it might be nice to check that episode out as well. But Elinor is really cool. We met on the internet, and we also met in real life 2 weeks ago in Brighton, which was really special to me. And in the last interview on Daydreaming Wolves, we started talking about something that really impressed me. Like, I just hadn't heard or seen or thought about this phrase in this way before, which is building a business beyond and against capitalism. And I was like, oh my God, we need to talk about this some more. I really want to hear what that means to different people and how they're working with that. And Elinor just felt like the perfect first guest to open these conversations with. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to hand it over to you now so you can introduce yourself.
Yay! Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me, and yeah, it was amazing to meet you in person. I just feel an even stronger connection with you now. About me, I guess I've been in business in various ways since my early 20s, kind of on and off.
Mm-hmm.
And business that doesn't fall into a capitalist model has, like, the very first business I was involved in was a workers' cooperative. So I've always held that kind of sense that I didn't want to be kind of swallowed up into the capitalist mindset just because I wanted to be in business and make my own money.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Mm.
I feel like I've got a bit lost about what the introduction should include.
No, that's
Maybe
really
the
great. I think it's a fantastic idea to start with values, and I think that's what we just did. So that's amazing. Maybe
okay.
you can tell us a little bit more about what you're offering within your business right now.
Right now, my business is mainly focused around supporting people who want to make social action for social justice part of their everyday life and work,
Mm-hmm.
with the with inner support. So I do that one-to-one
Mm-hmm.
through. I have training in spiritual counselling and listening and relating skills. So
Mm-hmm.
I support people to work through whatever they feel, whatever their fears are, whatever they feel their blocks are around taking action for social justice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I also support people with knowledge and learning, both about themselves and about issues through programs. So I was offering standalone programs. So last year I offered a program called Rooted, which was for white people to connect with their ancestors
Mm-hmm.
through a personal practice of reverence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and through that, to both become grounded in an authentic practice that wasn't appropriating from other cultures that had been negatively impacted by colonialism,
Mm-hmm.
and as a way to face up to their personal inheritances of whiteness, white supremacy, colonialism, racism
Mm-hmm.
through their lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've what I'm moving towards very slowly is bringing that into a learning space, so it's more accessible, both in terms of in investment, both in terms of money and in terms of the time required, um,
Mm-hmm.
and when people, so there's more flexibility with when people can take courses. So my business is actually in flux at the moment. The one-to-one work is solid, and
Mm-hmm.
the program side of it is in flux. And then I also do storytelling. So I have support from patrons to develop various storytelling performances and projects.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also, I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm starting a 100 Conversations project where I want to talk to people about, on the theme of business beyond and against capitalism. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and at the moment, it's just a 30-minute conversation with anybody who's interested about, so what are your thoughts and experiences about
Mm-hmm.
capitalism and the way they do and don't necessarily have to relate to each other and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess that's me. But I think at the core of all of it for me is the importance of the relationship between the inner and the outer, whether we call it spirituality or personal practice, or that sense of connection inward
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
with one another, for me is really vital. Not just in terms of taking action for social justice, but also in how we operate in our businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so beautiful to really be in deep conversation about that because what we're doing is different in some ways and there isn't like a blueprint or like a script that we could follow. So I'm so glad to be talking to you. um, I would love to circle back a little bit to what you said in the beginning of like the origin of when you were a person in the world and you decided that you would like to work for yourself. And I wonder if you want to share a little bit about why you felt that way, or maybe it was just more like a decision against employment rather than one for working for yourself. I don't know. I would love to know more about that.
It's a bit of both. I mean, it was actually it was within a year of graduating from university that I joined a workers' cooperative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was I had this need to do work that was meaningful to me, and which did not contribute that contributed positively to the world and did not contribute to systems of oppression.
Yeah.
So I was, and I'd graduated from university into a recession in 1992. So even though I had a really good degree from a really good university, I was doing temp jobs that really didn't require the range of skills that I had for businesses that I had not only had no interest in, but was actually opposed to ethically. And I think so many of us are in that position where we feel like our only survival option is to work for organisations that we disagree with or within systems that we disagree with, particularly in order to survive. And I know a lot of people, I feel like in many ways that's got worse because of how the job market has changed and how precarious employment is. So that there's the not wanting to work for, I suppose the 1960s term for it was the man. But yeah, not wanting to work against my own interests and my own principles. But also wanting a degree of personal freedom. Because even in my early 20s, I'd already been living with a chronic illness for 10 years. And I did not have the capacity to work the way that employers want people to work. I could do it for a certain length of time, but then I just needed to stop. So I need that freedom. Even then I needed it when my health was much better than it is now. Physically and health-wise, that freedom is necessary for me. And also creatively, that freedom is necessary for me. I think on the one hand, there's a lot to be said for being our own patrons. Like, do you have the capacity to and the capacity and the willingness to do a job where they spend 40 hours a week at work, they get a decent salary, they can support themselves and have the energy and time to do art, whatever it looks like for them. I think that's great for those people. But I'm not one of those people. I certainly can't work 40 hours a week, even if I don't do anything else. And it's also the freedom to express ideas and be heard, and actually make an impact on what is done and how it's done, which is a very rare thing within a mainstream workplace.
Oh, yes.
And just that fundamentally underlying that is the fact that I value everybody's humanity, and everybody's perspective is unique, and everybody's perspective is important. And that was one of the amazing things for me about being in a workers' cooperative. It was a very small workers' cooperative, and we made all decisions by consensus. And one of the principles behind making decisions by consensus was that even if 9 people in the room want one thing and one person doesn't, that one person, by the logic of democracy, that one person just gets voted down. But by the logic of consensus, that one person holds a perspective or knowledge or wisdom or information that other people in the room don't have access to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's based on the idea that people aren't wrong per se. They're just bringing something different, and that needs to be paid attention to.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are some of the things I value. And obviously I work for myself now rather than being involved with other people. But my ideal world would be to have a small workers' cooperative doing what I do. Because I think there is such, there's an amazing freedom in working for oneself and putting one's own ideas into practice, and it's exhausting and it's lonely.
Yeah.
So
yes. Yes, I'm feeling every single word of this, and it's so beautiful to speak to you today because it's my 4th business birthday.
Oh, happy birthday!
Thank you. So I've been thinking about these things all day, and I resonate so deeply with what you said about the personal freedom that is both needed and necessary, and also feels so, I don't want to say luxurious because it really, really shouldn't be a luxury, you know, but I'm also in this awareness of it being very special, and I so really treasure it. And I also feel the challenges and the pain and the loneliness of figuring all this out by yourself. And then also this like sweetness of it being its own path of learning and development. And I don't know what else I would have done with my life, to be honest. I really can't imagine not running small businesses and thinking about what that means. And one thing that I was thinking about today, as I was journaling about the last 4 years and kind of what's next for me, is that I felt even if this is all it is really enough, and the sense of enoughness that we can create for ourselves is really important to me. Like there's still things I want. I still want to interview so many more people. I want to bring these stories to more people. I would love to have more space to be creative in non-commercial ways, which requires more income. And I would definitely love to have more living space right now because I live in a tiny house. But on the other hand, I feel like a really deep sense of contentment, and that's something I've never felt within employment. And I think you're right that this has so much to do with how precarious and anxiety-inducing the workplace can often be, and how disconnected we become from the purpose of our work, because we, you know, so often workers are so specialized on a specific task and really not being given a chance to connect with the greater picture or the long-term vision of the organization that they're in. And I think that's, yeah, like really one of the biggest sad challenges of our time, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. And I think part of that is because people are regarded as a resource for the business, fundamentally to exploit. Even if the business is run in a human and humane way, fundamentally, if it's running the standard on the standard model, which is the model, then it's everything is a resource to be exploited for the purpose of profit. And it's very hard to feel part of something. You know, it's like managers who want to do a good job, their people and have a good flow of information can only go so far because of the hierarchy, A, the hierarchy involved, and B, the exploitation involved. And I know a lot of people actually, they want to be in a hierarchy because they want to know exactly what their role is, and they don't have to make too many decisions. And that's fair enough. But on the other hand, that I believe that there are a lot more people than let on who have a lot to give, and aren't given the scope to express that.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I feel like I'm repeating myself in my resonates a little bit, but I think the thing I would love to pick up on in what you just said is this relationship to power, and
Yeah,
how it's okay to not want it, but also how it's okay to want it at the same time,
yeah,
and how I think there's so much to learn in it, which is a theoretical concept, obviously, but I think in theory it's so powerful to be able to make free choices around how you position yourself to power, to
yeah,
either say, I think at this stage in my life, for whatever reason, I would like to just kind of be part of a small organization and be told what to do, and just really know my structures in my day and my routine, and have clear expectations set, and I'm not necessarily super interested in participating in the process of decision making or vision building, all of that. I've
mhm,
definitely felt that way. And then there's been other times where I've really like reveled in this joy of like, I'm going to decide and plan all these things and I don't have to report back to anyone,
yeah,
and that can come with its own exhaustion, I think.
yeah,
But the point is that I have choice in, um in how I relate to that and how I prioritize that at different points in my life, and that's something I'm super grateful for. Yeah.
yeah. I definitely, and I think a lot of it is to do with um, responsibility and accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking a lot recently about decision making, about what's required
Mm-hmm.
to make a decision. And I've kind of broken it down into three elements. There's competence,
Mm-hmm.
so that's knowledge, skills, experience, aptitude, etc. There's capacity, which is, do you have the energy, do you have the time, do you have the resources?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's willingness, which is, do you want to?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this is influenced by Jen McCabe, but a lot of it is also based in my own experiences over a lifetime of largely being in different working environments, um, and observing the way decision-making structures work or don't work, and how people exercise power and abuse power and avoid power.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's like, if if either for reasons of competence or for reasons of capacity or for reasons of willingness, we're not in a place where we want to take responsibility and be held accountable for decisions
Mm-hmm.
in the workplace, then probably running our own business is not a great thing for us to be doing.
Yes. Yes. And that's a cool thing to figure out, who knows?
And I think it's really important to give ourselves permission, if that's
Mm.
where we're at, to be there,
Yeah.
because especially in the online business coaching world, there's so much. I mean, maybe not quite so much at the moment, but certainly a couple of years ago, it was like job was a dirty word,
Mm.
and if you weren't running your own empire,
God,
you
how
know,
did anyone ever think that was a cool word to use? I don't know.
yeah, no idea. But if you weren't running your own, if you didn't have the title of CEO, and you weren't
Mm.
running, you didn't have enormous goals, and
Mm.
then you weren't living up to your potential, which is code
Mhm.
for you were a bad person,
Mm. Yeah.
and which is bullshit, because at different points in our lives we need different things. We have different capacities, we have different willingness, and we have different competence.
Mhm.
And I'm really lucky, I think, that I've well, in some ways it's been a blessing, and in some ways it's been a curse, that I would always rather make decisions and take responsibility and be accountable in the workplace than see somebody else making decisions that I can see exactly how it's going to go. I don't like how it's going to go, and having no power to change it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but
Yeah.
I've also had times when there's literally no way I could run my own business for health
Mm.
reasons, or um, for mental capacity reasons, or needing to take care of other people, or sorts of reasons.
Yeah, I think in addition to what you said about those goals, and how ridiculous that is, that we're all meant to run our empires and have these huge goals of 6 figures and
7 figures, 8 figures.
Yes, I also feel like I really want to say it's okay to not want to work at all, and
Yes.
it's so valid.
Yes.
There's so many good reasons for being at the point in your life where that's just not an option or not a desire. And I think we really can do so much around appreciating different contributions that people make. And I think sometimes someone's contribution is that they're allowing other people a space to support them, which is so beautiful. Like, I really struggle with receiving support, and I would like to kind of remind myself sometimes when I need to do that, that I'm not just this like empty vessel standing around doing nothing, using up resources, but I'm also giving someone else space to experience themselves as a provider of something that is valuable, or maybe even like life-giving to me. And that's really beautiful. And, that's a dance. And I think we don't even need to be transactional with that. It doesn't have to go both ways, or like be always the same thing over time. Sometimes there might be a lifetime where we're just like not doing very much, and that's okay.
Absolutely. And I think that that fits very much with this idea that we have to deserve things. It's like, no, we're alive. We have needs, we have things to offer. That's deserving literally does not come into it. There isn't so, and I think a lot of I've the times when I've needed other people's support, I find it immensely frustrating, because I have this desire to be independent, and part of that is my personality, but a lot of it, I think, is this kind of training we have, that if you're not capable of looking after or competent to look after yourself, and as an individual, separate from all other individuals, then you have no worth and you don't deserve anything. And that, again, that's crap.
Yes. Yes, it is. And I also almost feel like unlearning those things that we've just described is almost a bigger chunk of the work than learning the skills that we need to start a small business.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah, isn't it? Another thing that I would love to touch on is like this idea of expansion and contraction, and how under capitalism, like you said, there's this idea that growth is really the only thing of value, and this is what we all should aim for at all times, at any cost. And this is something that's come up in my business just now, because I'll share this. I just felt my body getting a bit itchy, but I think it's really important to share. So, as you know, I've built a Patreon this last year, and I've been really pleased at the end of last year of how far I've come with that, and how it has changed my ability to make space for free offerings. I've run more than 20 workshops last year, free ones online. I'm running several low-cost programs that I really love. And that's been amazing. And it's really, to a large part, been able to do that because of Patreon. And in February, we're talking now on the 1st of March, I've just really not been able to put much out there. I've not posted much on social media. I've not been podcasting a lot. I've done, I've met all my commitments that I've had to other people, but kind of only just about, if I'm really honest. And so there's been a decrease in my Patreon, and I've also, both in January and February, have not earned as much money as I spend. And I feel okay about what I spend, because I've met needs that I really had at the time and that were valid, and I know I'm going to balance that out and it's going to be okay. But I think I just wanted to name that last year has been a huge year of expansion for me, but this is not the whole story. My Patreon has become a little bit smaller. I'm still incredibly grateful. but also I haven't earned as much as I spend. And that's just something that happens. And I really accept that deeply as a part of the experience and as something that I can learn from and as something that's in a way also unavoidable. And I just don't want to be in that story of only expansion is success and everything else is a deep failure or, you know, a flaw in my personality or anything like that. So yeah.
Yeah. I resonate really strongly with that, because it is such a, you know, if you're not growing, if you're not expanding, it's such a it's such an unhealthy mindset within our cultures, that in relation to money or possessions or property or profits, if you're not constantly expanding, that's a, you know, you're doing it wrong. But yeah, life isn't like that. The seasons aren't like that. You and I both live in the northern hemisphere in,
oh
in
yes,
a country that has seasons.
yes.
Yeah, and I think it's not only in terms of money, but I think also in terms of effort. As you were saying, I mean, the reason for your Patreon shrinking is that you weren't able to put the energy in that you had been. Which, if you think about it, as human beings, as animals, which we are, that's perfectly reasonable. You know, you don't. No animal at this latitude spends the whole year doing exactly the same things.
Yes.
At the same level of energy.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I really resonate with that as well, because this last month, February, I've basically had to put all my marketing on hold. And I was really because I've been supporting my partner through some medical treatment and having to do a lot of traveling, and I have a chronic illness, 2 chronic illnesses, depending on how you add them up, maybe more, which means that I can't keep doing everything. When new things get added to my plate, something else has to go.
Yeah.
And I've been feeling so stressed out about, because I have this narrative, I should be marketing, you know, always be marketing. And it's like, actually, that I have felt so much better this week, because at the beginning of the week, I sat myself down, because I realised that what I was doing to myself was very destructive. I sat myself down and said, okay, make a decision. Are you going to keep marketing on your to-do list while your partner's recovering, or are you going to take it off? Because I was in that in-between place that's really stressful, where it was on my list, but I knew I couldn't do it. You know, that place where it's like, and it just stays on the list, and it gets more and more stressful and heavier every day, and every week it gets transferred over to the next day's to-do list. And it's like,
I know.
I'm just gonna cross it out and throw it away, and I'll review it every week just to see where my energy. But I feel so much less stressed out, not because I'm doing anything different, but because I've given myself permission. I've made that decision.
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing marketing at the moment. Full stop. And it's just released all of that stress, because I was like, I should be doing marketing, but I'm not doing marketing. Whereas now it's like, it's just, I'm not doing marketing. it's
yes. And there's so much time and expansiveness in that as well. I feel, like I think the first step often for me is accepting seasonal, cyclical living, and contraction as part of that. And then also just remembering that this is a marathon and not a sprint. I don't even know. I really wish there was a better analogy for that, because I'm not a runner.
This is an amble, not a run.
Oh, yes. Okay. Great. Yes, totally. And like, just to come back to this idea that yes, there are practical things like, food needs to be on the table, and
Yeah,
that's so real. I don't want to deny that in any way, but it doesn't always have to be the next big thing. And
yeah,
slowness is also such a luxury. And I'm trying to, in my consumption as well, remind myself that while there are things such as more living space, as I've already mentioned, that I would really like, and that's, it's becoming a slightly more urgent desire at the moment. But
yeah,
I think, there are these desires that I have, but also, oh gosh, it's so beautiful to have time and to not feel rushed and to not feel like we have to reach these milestones that are conventionally understood to mark success.
yes.
Um, yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's beautiful to live outside of that, and I really appreciate that.
That just this may or may not be relevant to this podcast, but it just pinged in my head. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Relationship anarchy has
Mm-hmm.
this phrase of escalator relationships. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, at this stage we must have told each other that I
Mm-hmm.
love you, and at this stage we should move in together, and at this
Mm-hmm.
stage we should be having a joint bank account, and at this stage
Mm-hmm.
we get married, and at this stage we should have a hat, buy our, it's like this ever progressing, getting to quotes higher or quotes deeper levels,
Mm-hmm.
and within, and that's such an assumption, and it's such an assumption with everything,
Yeah,
like not just relationships, with business, with finances, with everything.
yeah.
This narrative of progress, this myth of progress,
Mm.
that you start here and your goal is to get to there, wherever there is, and it's always better where you're going to than where you've been, and we mark that by these culturally normative, socially normative behaviours
Mm-hmm.
or decisions or announcements.
Mm.
Um, and I'm not quite a relationship anarchist myself, but I really appreciate that perspective, because it's
Mm.
like, hang on, am I doing this because I actually want to?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where my desire is? Or am I doing it because this is what my culture has programmed me to think I should be doing next?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I can think of so many examples of how that translates into small business stuff. Like the six figures, for example, I think are just one of them. But it's also often about building a team, or like, do you want to have an assistant? Do
Yeah.
you want to, gosh, I don't know, like have a separate office space that's outside of your home? Or do you want to go to a certain number of conferences each year? And all of these things I'm so not interested in. I love working in my house because it means I don't have to leave it,
Yes.
and I really like the idea of working in a co-op, and that's definitely something that I would love to be involved in at some point in my life. But if I'm completely honest, I think a part of me also recognizes that I have experienced relational trauma,
Mm.
and I don't want to go into my childhood now, but we all live under capitalism, and it is
Yeah.
difficult to relate to people in an authentic way. All this trying to say that I think a part of me is becoming a little bit anxious about the idea of really like surrendering my livelihood into a group of people in really deep interdependence. And
Mm.
so that part of me feels like, I think, um, at least part of my work I always feel like I want to be doing by myself to
Mm-hmm.
some extent, because it's scary,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very scary. But also, all this to say, I've never had a desire to become a big employer and have an assistant and a bookkeeper and a designer, all these things. I really, really actually enjoy doing most of my work myself. And
Mm.
I sometimes hire people or their perspectives or insights and bring them in for a specific project or some kind of like growth edge that I have. But I don't have this conventional, like, to me, it isn't a mark of a success to have a team necessarily if that's not
No.
who you are. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it's that we need to shift our perspective on what success is. And
Mm,
for me, a lot of that, the idea of business beyond capitalism, it's not just the practical stuff,
mm,
like, are you profit driven? Do you have investors who aren't workers in the business? Who gets the profits? Um,
mm-hmm,
it's also, how do you relate to yourself and other people?
mm-hmm.
what
Yeah.
level of trust is possible
Mm.
in relationships, and what level of trust of yourself is
Mm-hmm.
possible.
Mm-hmm.
Is really deep personal and interpersonal things like that.
Mm.
Because I've been in two workers cooperatives, one of which was run by consensus and one of which was run by one person, one vote,
Mm-hmm.
democratic. And I've also been in a secondary cooperative, which is a cooperative whose members are worker and housing cooperatives. And I've been in various non-hierarchical spiritual groups.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I found about all of it is that people often say, who've tried those things, that, oh, that doesn't work.
Mm.
It's not that it doesn't work, it's that we don't have the skills, and
Mm-hmm.
that actually that our cultural conditioning
Mm-hmm.
within a capitalist system
Mm-hmm.
strips us of the skills
Yeah.
to be able to cooperate successfully.
Oh, yes. Yes. I love that you just said that. I kind of made a mental note earlier in our conversation about talking about this internal process
Mm.
and how it's its own kind of path of healing almost, not
Mm.
just almost, it is, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I said to you when we met in person that I'm really interested in facilitating or like working with people in this transition. And I don't see this as like, let me come and like rescue you from capitalism and show you the way to freedom and this is all going to be so great. But I just really love being in conversation with people about power and independence and interdependence and agency and all these things, and to see like what is coming up for us as we try different things
Yeah.
outside of employment, and how is that its own spiritual journey, and how can we support each other in that, and how can we really recognize that it's so much more about unlearning than acquiring new skills.
Yes, absolutely. And the difficulty, yes, to all of that. And I'm just reflecting that the difficulty that I have observed, whether it's independent, like people trying to work with one another in a in a cooperative way, keeping their own businesses, or whether it's people within a collective or a workers cooperative or a housing cooperative or any other kind of group, a lot of it comes back to power.
Mm.
Because a lot of us are attracted to non-hierarchical and mutual and cooperative and non and anti-capitalist ways of doing business or working or relating, because we see power being abused in the current mainstream of the system.
Mm.
What that also often means is that we have personal issues with power, our own power and other people's power,
Mm.
which really makes it difficult to make decisions with other people and work together.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't when that one of the ways that human beings deal with that is by instituting hierarchies,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and not only dividing up work and responsibility, but also arranging it in kind of a pyramid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when you don't have that, a lot of us are like, oh, I don't know what to do. Which shakes our foundations, which means that all of our issues with relating and with power and with money and with all the things
All the things.
and we end up being our trauma ends up interacting with other people's trauma
Mm-hmm.
rather than us relating with one another.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, I'm doing jazz hands over here. I can't deny it. Yes. Yes, very true. Yeah. And I think there's also like something very, to me at the moment, feels something sweet about surrendering into this idea that this is not something that we might experience in this lifetime, to be totally beyond this, working through the trauma and doing the unlearning, and yet that this is so important to do and keep in mind and work towards, and that in that that just being in going in that direction is like such a freedom as well, that we have the headspace to even have these conversations like that. You and I on a Friday afternoon can sit at our desk and just talk and think freely and speak to each other. That is so beautiful. I really want to be grateful for that, while also knowing that there's so much still to do.
Yeah. Oh, and that makes me, one of the things that I come across in my work with people, and also just in the world in general,
Mm-hmm.
amongst good-hearted people who want to do good things, you know, whatever that looks like for them, the idea that we need to be whole and healed before we can, you know, we need to have got there, wherever there is, before we can do the thing.
Yeah.
Rather than shifting that round to the mindset whereby doing the thing is the process, is part of the process through which we engage with healing.
Yeah.
And that, I think, particularly in terms of relating with other people as equal, autonomous, sovereign beings, you can't actually, I might not be, I could be completely wrong here, but it is my experience is that I can't actually engage my healing in those areas without relating, without doing the things that are difficult and scary.
Yes. Again, jazz hands over here. Yes. Oh gosh, yes. I was sitting on my bed, not on my bed, I was actually on someone. Anyway, I was sitting on a bed the other day, doing a little cry with my friend, and we both said like, fuck, healing happens in relationships. Oh.
Damn! Why can't it happen at home in my own little room where I don't have to be vulnerable to anybody?
Exactly, under my weighted blanket. Damn it. Yeah. Oh gosh, I love our conversation so much.
Yeah.
I would love to talk another couple of hours, but I want to respect people's time and yours and our attention span. And also, I would love to speak to you again. I'm almost wishing like this could maybe be a seasonal thing or something. But I would love, before we go and before you share what you're currently offering and where people can find you, is there maybe like a thing that if there's someone out there listening to this and this person is kind of not sure whether they should start a business or not, or they feel, maybe they want to start something on the side or become an artist, is there like one or two things that you would want to tell them?
Yeah. First of all, is don't let how scary it is put you off. And the second is, you don't need to know exactly what you want to do or what your goals are before you start. Because it's only by doing things and trying things that you discover that.
Yes.
You know, you have to go through lots and lots of iterations. And I work a lot with the action learning cycle, which is where you do a thing, you experience it, you reflect on the experience, and then you plan for your next thing. And that's actually just a whole way of working. You know, you don't have to have everything figured out, because every step you're taking is a learning. Every step you're taking is an opportunity to find out something new about your work, about yourself, about what you want. And that, become friends with failure. Like, failure isn't failure. Honestly, it really isn't. Failure is not failure. It's just another iteration.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think it's also beautiful and good to share that journey with other people. I think there's often like a story or an expectation to come out with this perfectly formed business and offering that you want to bring into the world. And I always encourage people to use the website Time Machine. If you Google that, it comes up and it lets you see what someone's website has looked like 2 or 3 or 5 years ago. I'm somewhat embarrassed about this, if I'm honest, but I think it's really helpful. We need to see these things, we need to see these processes, and they are messy sometimes, and that's cool, and it often leads to cool things. So
yes. Gosh, I'm just thinking about my first ever website now in 1998.
Oh wow.
Sort of pastel purple. Anyway,
I'm glad in a way that I changed URLs a couple of times, so those very first websites you can't find of me anymore, but anyway.
Yeah.
What are you currently offering, and where can people find you?
Okay, so people can find me at elinorpredota.com. You don't need any W's, it's just elinorpredota.com. And my current offerings are working one-to-one with people. My name for that work is Sanctuary Sessions, because what I hope to provide is a sanctuary where, simply by being with somebody, asking appropriate questions and keeping people accountable to themselves, transformation happens in reaching goals or changing perspectives. Or I'm aiming at the moment to work more with people who want to address the ways in which oppression and privilege work within their own lives. But I work with people on, kind of their own work with their clients. I work with people on connecting with their ancestors. I've worked with people on figuring out their art. I've worked with people on developing a personal practice. The content doesn't matter. It's the container. The container that matters and does the work. My brain's just gone blank. I'm actually still looking for a few people to be early adopters and beta testers for my group program learning space. That won't actually kick off. It's very, very early stages, and it won't properly kick off with any content to test until probably late spring, early summer. But if people are interested in doing that, it gives them free or low cost access to all of my program materials in return for honest and as detailed as possible feedback on the content, the user interface, all the things. And they can contact me about that via my website. I've also moved my storytelling patronage in-house to my own website. If you just look under the storytelling tag in the menu, there's a drop down with a become a patron thing, and that's I've got some exciting things happening with connecting traditional stories to contemporary questions about gender and what gender and
oh my god.
So that's one of my projects at the moment.
Amazing.
And then finally there's the conversations I want to have, which is just like there's a tag on my website which is business beyond capitalism in the menu. Each of these 4 things has its own menu tab, so you can just find them on my website that way. Basically that I want to talk to anybody who has any curiosity even about what business could possibly look like beyond capitalism. And how we can get to something beyond capitalism with business as part of the process of getting there.
That sounds so beautiful.
That was a bit of a ramble, but as you can tell,
that was great.
But it in my head, it's all connected.
It is totally connected in my head as well, and it's also going to be connected in the show notes. So that's Oh, good. Oh, thank you so much, Eleanor. This has been such a beautiful conversation. And I'm like, again, I feel like I made just the right choice, letting this be the first interview. I'm so grateful for everything that you shared. And I'm really, really excited and proud to share that with everyone else. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you as
you.
always.